The Nature of the Psyche, Its Human Expression, a Seth book, by Jane Roberts. Read by Martin John. Continuation Chapter 7, page 111, Session 780, June 22, 1976, 9:19 p.m., Tuesday. Author note. As we sat for the session, Jane reminded me that she thought Seth would do an introduction tonight for her own book on Paul Cézanne. This feeling had first come to her earlier today. "Wouldn't that be a riot?" she laughed. "But I've done introductions for Seth books, so why shouldn't he do one for mine?" And yes, the Cézanne material mentioned earlier, see Jane's introduction for Psyche, had developed into a full-fledged book of its own. A note of interest. The area immediately surrounding Elmira had some considerable flooding today, although the city itself wasn't affected to any great degree. In any case, Jane and I were safe and dry on our little hill this time, a far cry from our experiences in the great flood of 1972, as described in The Nature of Personal Reality, the book. After that event, we decided that a flood was one reality we could do without. End author note. Good evening. Dictation. You are part of the world, and yet you are yourself. This does not confuse you, and you follow your own sense of identity without difficulty, even though you are everywhere surrounded by other individuals. Using this as an analogy, you are a part of your psyche or your soul, dwelling within it, easily following your own sense of identity, even though that psyche also contains other identities besides the one that you think of as your own. You draw sustenance from the world and grow through its medium. You contribute your abilities and experience, helping to form the world's civilization and culture. To some strong degree, you bear the same kind of relationship to your own psyche. Through ordinary methods of communication, you are able to tell what is going on in other countries beside your own, even without traveling to them. News telecasts acquaint you with conditions around the world. Now there are also inner, quote, broadcasts going on constantly, to which, however, you are not consciously attuned. These keep you in constant touch with the other portions of your own psyche. You are so a part of the world that your slightest action contributes to its reality. Your breath changes the atmosphere. Your encounters with others alter the fabrics of their lives and the lives of those whom come in contact with them. It is easy for you to see how the cells of the body form it. That is, you understand at least the cooperative nature of the cell's activities. An alteration on the part of one cell immediately causes changes in the others and brings about a difference in body behavior. It is somewhat more difficult for you to understand the ways in which your own actions and those of others combine to bring about world events. On the one hand, each of my readers is but one individual alive on the planet at any given time. It may seem that the individual has little power. On the other hand, each individual alive is a necessary one. It is true to say that the world begins and ends with each person. That is, each of your actions is so important contributing to the experience of others whom you do not know, that each individual is like a center about which the world revolves. If you did not do what you did today, for example, the entire world would be in some way different. Your acts ripple outward in ways that you do not understand, interacting with the experience of others, and hence forming world events. The most famous and the most anonymous person are connected through such a fabric, and an action seemingly small and innocuous can end up changing history as you understand it. Children often feel that the world and time began with their birth. They take the world's past on faith. In very important terms, this is quite a legitimate feeling, for no one else can experience the world from any other viewpoint except from his or her own, or affect it except through private action. En masse, the individual action obviously causes world events. In metaphysical terms, you have your being in your psyche or soul in somewhat the same manner. Identities are obviously psychic environments, primarily, rather than physical ones. Physical objects cannot move through each other as a table cannot move through a chair. Mental events behave differently. They can mix and merge, move through each other while still maintaining their own focus. They can interact on psychic levels in the way that events do on physical levels, but without physical restrictions. Though you are a portion of your psyche, then, your identity is still inviolate. You will not be submerged or annihilated in a greater self. It carries a stamp, a divine mark, of its own integrity. It follows its own focus and knows itself as itself, even while its own existence as itself may be but a portion of another, quote, identity. Moreover, there is nothing to stop it from exploring this other greater identity, or moving into it, so to speak. When this happens, both identities are changed. In greater terms, the psyche or soul nowhere exists as a finished product or entity. On the other hand, it is always becoming, and that becoming happens on the part of each of its own portions. Your very physical stance and existence are dependent upon portions of your own psyche's reality, or your soul's existence, of which you are normally unaware. Those portions are also dependent upon your existence, however. You take your breathing, your moving, for granted, though they are unconsciously produced. In certain terms, however, at one time, you had to learn how to do these things that you are not now consciously concerned with. At still other levels of reality, activities that you now consciously claim as your own have, in those same terms and from another viewpoint, become unconscious, providing a psychic history from which other identities emerge, as it seems that your own identities emerge from unconscious bodily activity. Take your break. Author note, 10:05. It's hard material to get, Jane said, in spite of her delivery, which had moved right along. It's one of those things where it's unraveling as you go along, very difficult to verbalize. Resume in the same manner at 10:25, end author note. In certain very definite terms, the existence of one person implies the existence of all others who have lived or will live. Your own existence is implied, therefore, in everyone else's, and theirs is implied in yours. I said that languages gain their meaning largely from the pauses and hesitations between sounds. They obviously gain their meaning also because of the sounds not used, so that any one language also implies the existence of all others. To that extent, all other languages reside silently within any given spoken language. The same applies to language written upon a page. The written characters make sense because of their arrangement, and precisely because they are chosen over other characteristics that do not appear. In the same kind of manner, your focused existence is dependent upon all those other existences that are not you. You are a part of them. You ride upon their existences, though you are primarily you and no other. The same applies, however, to every other person. Each of them becomes a primary focus or identity within which all others are implied. In ordinary terms, you do not, quote, make yourselves. You are like a living language spoken by someone who did not originate it. The language was there for you to use. The language in this case is a molecular one that speaks your physical being. The components of that language, or the earth elements from the body, were already created when you were born, as the alphabet of your particular language was waiting to be used. Your very physical life, then, implies a source, a life out of which the physical one emerges, the implied, unspoken, unmaterialized, unsounded vitality that supplied the ingredients for your physical, bodily, molecular, quote, alphabet. Your physical life therefore implies a non-physical one. You take your particular language so for granted, and use it so effortlessly that you give no thought at all to the fact that it implies other languages also, or it gains its meaning because of inner assumptions that are never spoken, or by the use of pauses in which no sounds are made. You live your lives in the same fashion. There are many languages, though most people speak one, or two, or three at most. Languages also have accents, each somewhat different while still maintaining the original integrity of any given language. To some extent you can learn to speak yourself with an accent, so to speak. Say that I smiled, in which case, still being yourself, you allow yourself to take on some of the attributes of the other language. You can read the world in a different way, while still maintaining your own identity, or you can move into a different country of yourself that speaks your native language, but with a different slant. You do this to some extent or another whenever you tune into broadcasts to which you usually pay no attention. The news is slightly foreign, while it is still interpreted through the language that you know. You are getting a translation of reality. The psyche, always in a state of becoming, obviously has no precise boundaries. The existence of one, again, implies the existence of all, and so any one given psyche comes into prominence also because of the existence of the others upon which its reality rides. One television station exists in the same manner, for if one could not be tuned into, theoretically speaking, none could. These intercommunications, then, reach outward in all directions. Each identity has eternal validity within the psyche's greater reality. At one level, then, all underlined, any person contacting his or her own psyche can theoretically contact any other psyche. Life implies death, and death implies life. That is, in the terms of your world. In those terms, life is a spoken element, while death is the unspoken but still present element, quote, beneath, upon which life rides. Both are equally present. To obtain knowledge consciously other than that usually available, you pay attention to the pauses, to the implied elements in language, to any felt or sensed quality upon which the recognizable experiences of life reside. There are all kinds of information available to you, but it must still be perceived through your own focus or identity. I have said that all events occur at once, a difficult statement to understand. All identities occur at once also. Each event changes every other. Present ones alter past ones. Any one event implies the existence of probable events which do not, quote, emerge, which are not, quote, spoken. Physical world events therefore rest upon sounds in their own particular manners, with their own rhythms, one emphasizing what another ignores. Other probabilities, therefore, emphasize events that are only implied, as pauses, in your reality, so that your physical events become the implied probable ones upon which other worlds reside. Take your break. Now, dictation of a different kind. For Rupert's book, we will begin an introduction. Author note: now Seth moved from his own book to this new subject, Jane's The World View of Paul Cézanne. With ease and obvious zest, this was the first time in our sessions that he delivered material on 2 books in one night. He finished his work for Cézanne tonight, though. The session ended at 11:41 p.m. End. Mahalo endlessly for listening.